had kind of a similar feeding, kind of similar. Not as hard of a bite, but I became engorged really quickly again. And she had a tongue tie and a lip tie. But it was so far back that the lactation consultant at O'Blennis was like, I'm not sure. It seems like it could be, but we're not positive. Usually if there's the lip, the tongue as well can be part of it. And then we had some manipulation done, and it was able to smooth it out a little bit, but it still wasn't a really good suck. It was just because I made so much, she was getting enough.
Okay.
And then went and had it lasered, both of them. And that was like within a day. It was like, this is a huge difference.
So let's talk about that a little more in detail. So for those who are watching and are not familiar with what you're talking about, they can have a little bit of a better understanding.
So anatomically, I'm not really sure like when it happens in development, but there's a piece of skin in the underneath the front part of the lip that will hold the lip in, so it's hard for the baby to flip it up to get a good latch. And then the tongue in the back, the same thing, it can prevent it from like cupping and moving, depending on where it is and how long it is. And I don't know, there's different degrees that they're classed at. I don't remember what hers was. But the procedure, the dentist, I believe, there's one in Dayton, I believe, from here. And then there's one north of Columbus where we went. And the procedure takes 5 minutes. It's really quick. A quick little laser, and then you nurse right after. And then you have to do some stretching exercises, like holding their lips out and like moving their tongue a little bit for a few weeks after that, so they get used to that new movement. But it was a huge difference in feeding. And it was.
So we've mentioned some localities here with Columbus and Dayton. I didn't mention at the beginning of the episode that we are filming today, as we always do, in the Women's Center at Ohio University. So I'd like to say thank you to the Women's Center and thank you to our crew, who's also part of Ohio University. Okay, so Cassie, let's hear what your experiences have been like with breastfeeding.
I just have a quick question for Amy. Do you think that you would have gotten the tie and the lip released if it was your first? Or do you think if it was recommended or almost recommended by Michelle?
My first?
Like, what do you? I mean, just looking back at it, experience versus no experience.
I don't know. I think because it was so hard, like because I knew what. Yeah, I don't know. That's a good question. Hers would have been really difficult too, and I think it probably would have taken, maybe not in that first 2 weeks of life. It might have been like a couple months after that, but I think I was really willing that this is what we were going to do to feed, that I probably would have done it, but not as soon, and I probably would have been more either damaged by it or like more breastfeeding problems from it.
I would think that one more negative experience might be like, oh wait, there's a solution that could help this, and not lead you down the road of all those issues again. That that's like, oh wait, there's a light of we can do something about this. So it's the frenulum that's underneath the tongue. And I can talk a little bit more about tongue tie real quick. So your tongue and the floor of your mouth are fused together during development. And there's a specific point in time that the tongue lifts up and becomes movable. And so those cells that were connecting the two are supposed to die based on programmed cell death, like apoptosis, and they don't. And so the tongue's restricted. So the movement of the tongue is restricted by the frenulum, but it's collagen, and so we're not cutting muscles or tissues of any. It's not stretchy. It's collagen, and so the point, it can only stretch 3%, and so the laser really helps. I had 2 tongue-tied children, and also lived 40 years of my life, and then realized that I was tongue-tied, and so I had my own tongue tie released. Oftentimes, the more you're learning about breastfeeding, and specifically tongue tie, which ankyloglossia is the technical term, but tongue-tied babies come from tongue-tied parents oftentimes.
Okay.
So when you kind of start looking in the family history, you might hear from grandparents or, aunts and uncles like, oh yeah, so-and-so had a very severe tongue tie. So it's a familial thing.
Okay.
That's
So what happens throughout life if you haven't had that addressed as a baby?
So the list of adult tongue tie symptoms, it's kind of like a scroll that like unrolls and keeps rolling on the ground. It's all sorts of things from migraines, TMJ, need for orthodontics, so malocclusion, sleep apnea. The placement of your tongue in your oral cavity shapes the entire oral cavity.
Wow.
So your tongue needs to be able to reach your palate to flatten your palate. And if it can't reach your palate, you end up with what's called a domed, like a very high palate. And some babies literally cannot reach it because of their restricted tongue. And like Amy was saying, depending on where that frenulum connects, we have different issues. The ones at the very tip, those are the ones that we discover early on, and can cause lots of, damage to nipples, lots of pain from the beginning. The posterior ties are a lot trickier to discover, and we kind of see a different set of issues with that. But the back of the tongue is responsible for the wave-like motion. So if you have a posterior tie, that is impaired. And so they literally cannot milk the breast like we need them to. And so some moms' bodies in response over-make milk in an effort to pour the milk into the baby, literally, to make it easy for the baby. I'm convinced our body knows all about this, that our bodies know that we have a baby that has this issue, and in response just kind of dumps the milk out. So we often see the high supply, oversupply going along with undiagnosed tongue ties.
Okay, very interesting.
Yeah, it is.